Second game of the match, first draw between Ding and Gukesh. I was expecting on the first game, Ding won, and he was playing with white pieces. He's in no rush to go after his opponent's throat, clearly. And still, we saw something very interesting. What Ding's strategy is, at least thus far for the match. In this case, he employed a very quiet opening, but trying to get Gukesh into positions that are more strategical in content, a lot of maneuvers. He even exchanged the queens pretty early. So it was a Juco piano, and Ding played d3 in this position. After knight f6, knight c3. This is an opening you see a lot in beginners games. It's pretty common. Black normally plays d6 or something like a6 as Gukesh did. But don't let it fool you. I mean, it's very rich and very complex, and it's usually taught to beginners because it's so principled. Pieces go out early, it's easy to castle immediately for both sides, but there's a lot of play here. It's anything but drawish. a6, a4, Ding preserves the bishop, Gukesh does the same. d6, white castles, and black played h6. A rather normal move in this situation. Bishop e6 might be possible, but there's knight d5. There's knight d5 to deal with. And if bishop takes, pawn takes d5, something like knight e7, seems like we're dropping the pawn, but we have d4, which is a very fighting game here. After e takes d4, I think in the transmission, Judith Polgar and Daniel Naroditsky showed this line with bishop g5, which is quite annoying for black, honestly. The pin on this diagonal is not letting those knights unravel, and we're taking back on d4 anytime. We enjoy a space advantage. So what Gukesh played is probably most solid here, this h6. And now bishop e3. And this is a very common confrontation in these positions. Normally, black doesn't want to take here. If he takes after f takes e3, the double pawns are anything but weak. This pawn is actually helping white control some extra squares, d4 in the center, f4, which is usually an outpost that the knights tend to seek. And at the same time, we get the open f-file. And you see how this semi-open file where there's this black pawn gives white a lot of play against that pawn on f7. We have the bishop and the rook pointing there. And it's quite easy to go for an attack. For example, we might jump with the queen to g3. The maneuver knight h4 followed knight f5 is also quite annoying. So that's why you see that normally there tends to be tension here, but no one releases it, especially black. And Gukesh plays bishop e6. It has to be noted that Ding was playing almost instantly here. He played a5 within seconds, which is a novelty, I believe. Let me check that. Yeah, it hasn't been played before, at least not in the Lichess database that I'm seeing here. And it's clearly preparation, because with all the tension here, it's hard to believe that you'll play a5 instantly without calculating much. But it's a very enterprising move. And the idea is just to seize some space on the queen side. And after bishop takes, eventually d takes, the pawn on c5 that appears won't be so easy to defend, because the pawn on a5 is almost stopping b6. So pretty interesting idea to break up the black pawn structure and leave c5 once this exchange happens. A little bit weak. And it's exactly what happened in the game, actually. Gukesh took on c4. After d takes c4, this is probably the crucial moment as far as this game goes, and the opening most especially, because black has a wide choice. And the most important move to check here was bishop b4. Because if white isn't careful here, he might just be dropping a pawn. And if he wants to keep that pawn, he's getting these pawns tripled up, which can't be healthy. It seems like it's too much, but the move to check for black was knight d5. And that bishop looks a little bit funny, it has to be acknowledged. And there's the problem that e4 is falling though. e4 is falling after knight takes e4. And then white needs to seek compensation somewhere, but queen d3 is still making things very complicated. Now black needs to play knight c5. If he goes f5, for example, queen b3 is extremely annoying because then the b7 pawn will be in trouble, and with that the c7 pawn, the knight on c6, all of them will be under attack. For example, in case of some bishop c5, queen takes b7 is already putting a lot of difficulties for black. So f5 is not the move. He has to play knight c5. And then after queen f5, it's still a mess because it's really hard for black to retrieve this bishop from b4. Even though he's won a pawn, his pieces are badly uncoordinated. For example, something like bishop takes a5, bishop takes e5, d takes c. This knight is, well, it has a huge workload there. So something like knight takes e5 is already giving white a lot of advantage. This is a thing. Knight takes e6 will leave the bishop hanging. So it makes sense that Gukesh, if he wasn't especially and particularly prepared for a line like this, wouldn't go in here. There's just too much to calculate, and Ding has been playing instantly. He was clearly prepared for all of this, so it checks out that he just played castle, kingside castle, keep it easy. But this is exactly what Ding Liren was looking for. Just one more note though, I'm interested in this exchange. I want to mention something about bishop takes e3, f takes e3, because this looks horrible, but it's actually pretty thematic too. We have isolated and double pawns in the center, which tends to be bad. But in particular in this position, and as it tends to happen in this structure, in king-pawn games, the e3 pawn is excellent at its job, which is just securing these two squares and giving us some extra open files, while they're not so easy to attack really. If the pawn wasn't on e5, then that would be a problem. Then black castles, puts a rook on e8, and weak pawns, and this is something to remember, tend to be much weaker if they're on open, semi-open files. If there's a pawn from the opponent on e5, then these two pawns don't suffer as much. Of course, it's not that we love the structure as it is, but it has some pluses, and especially particularly good pluses in the middle game, where there are a lot of pieces still. The extra space, the extra squares, and the open files largely compensate for the flaw of these two pawns that are, of course, weak in the long run, but not so much here. So black castle, and after bishop takes e5, d takes e5, Ding was probably very happy about this. He spent like 4 or 5 minutes up to this point, and the position is, of course, equal. With best play, this is just going to fizzle out to a draw, as it just did, but if anyone has some hopes to play for something here, that's white. And it's because this pawn. Black has to be really careful with the c5 pawn. If at some point white can attack c5, b6 is really hard to accomplish. For one thing, after the exchange, b6 could be weak. We get the open a file. Sorry. So Ding is in no rush. He just plays b3, queen takes d1, rook f takes d1. And now the maneuver Ding intends is 91, 93, putting a lot of pressure on c5, also eyeing the e5 pawn, and he has exactly the same type of position we're talking about. Something where he can just maneuver, play long ball chess, and not a position in which you have to exhaust yourself calculating and trying to out-calculate your opponent. That'll be more of Gukesh's domain. Of course, Ding can play complex positions of that type, but he's definitely favored by going for this. Slight pressure, not that much counterplay for the opponent. So Gukesh played rook a8, and now Ding didn't play knight e1 immediately. There are definitely some complexities here. Knight d4, eyeing the c2 pawn, though it's still not a threat, not yet at least. Rook d6 and rook fd8. After the doubling of the rooks, there will be stuff like some discovered checks, which will eventually happen. I mean, black's plan is definitely that, or else the knight just lands on d3 and these 2 pawns will suffer. So Ding just took the rook out of there, defending c2 preventively. And after knight d4, only now he went knight e1, going for this maneuver. Though he still has to be careful because there are some tactics, as we're going to see. So Gukesh does the logical thing and just doubles up. And if we play knight d3 right now, we'll be blundering knight takes c2. Black really has to be careful with this because the a1 rook is under attack, and the temporary sacrifice of the knight on c2 leaves the knight on d3 hanging. It's an elimination of the defense, as we call this tactic, and black ends up winning a pawn there, so not great. It still needs to be prepared. So f3, sending the king to the center, is an idea. Ding just played king to f1. Black played a waiting move. He could have played rook fd8 right away, wasn't a problem, but g6 was played. Rook d1 now. Rook f2 d8, and with the king on f1, Ding makes sure that these checks with the king on g1 don't exist. So now he just plays f3, king g7. Only now Ding played king f2 once he averted all the tactics with discovered checks and attacks on the d1 rook. h5, well, Gukesh defended quite well, and Ding just accepted a draw in this position. Maybe he could have pushed a little bit more, say knight a4, which is aiming at the c5 pawn, but just knight d7, it seems like black is holding everything together here. So Ding just repeated. He played knight e2, knight c6, knight c3, and well, they agreed to a draw after some more repetitions in the same vein. Knight c3, knight d4. Well, as a conclusion, we're just making a quick recap of this game because it was quite uneventful to some extent. But what I like about it is that it really depicts what we can expect from Ding in this match. We haven't seen that much from Gukesh in the sense that he will have to seek a win in the next few games of the match. But he's probably not in such a hurry. I mean, it's definitely a good idea not to go completely crazy and play some sharp variation, just trying to win outright, because it might well backfire. He has time to play himself into the match. But Ding is clearly aiming for this slight pressure type of positions. And at this point, well, with a win on his back, he can definitely play a slower game and, well, take it to Gukesh. He will have to demonstrate how he's going to tilt the balance in any of these games and make the match even. So pretty exciting prospects. Now we're going to have to see some sharp, interesting chess by Gukesh, definitely. Thanks for watching. If you like the content in this channel and these analysis and recaps, please subscribe and leave a like. And I will be seeing you on the next game of the World Championship match with another analysis. And thanks a lot. See you next time.